possibly quite a number of innocent people are going to pay the price which they may not deserve. But my only submission is that we must diagnose the fact that communal rights are only the expressions, the kind of recrudescences, which emerge from time to time, where the preparation goes on for a long time. This is something which you have to be aware of, talk about it, guard ourselves against it, and then by doing that, fight against it. Fight against communal attitude is a civilizational fight. Because, communal rights, I think, are occasions where people forget the fact that they belong to a decent civilization. I think that is my idea. Thank you.
As such, when the question of globalization arises, many say that this concept of globalization is violating the rights of many common people. Even in the morning, like in the inauguration session also we heard that globalization is violating the rights of many common people. So how far do you speak out of because you gave a broad perspective of globalization right now, and I agree with it. Whenever the question of globalization came, this concept comes up. What exactly would you like to conclude, sir?
Now, as before various forums. Now, one such forum happened to be the WTO Ministerial Council. And in the WTO Ministerial Council, you might be knowing when Morosoli Maran was the Commerce Minister, he had even walked out. And ultimately, he went to the extent of saying that right to development is a fundamental right. Right to self-determination is a fundamental right. And the sovereignty of a state over these rights is unlimited. It cannot be questioned, and it is unquestionable. And even after the Qatar, that is the Doha Declaration, or at the end of the day, after the summit was over, they adopted a resolution. And in the resolution they said these things are to be respected by states. And there is more responsibility that should be owned by the developed states. See, the main problem in regard to this generally spoken is, if there are today 152 states in the WTO, 130 of them come from the developing as well as from the least developed states. And these 130 of them, remember, all of them in the ministerial meeting as well as in other forums of the WTO have one vote. That is why the voice of the developed states to that extent is silenced. Always remember, in every instance we have to make a good beginning, and good beginning has begun. See, another aspect that is being spoken at length is, in platforms like this we speak about the violation of human rights. But there are people who are prepared to work even in such a situation. I would give you one beautiful instance which has taken place in the state of Kuwait. In the state of Kuwait, remember, once in the 1990s, in 1998, India had sent a very good ambassador. This ambassador went to the extent of saying that India should not send, remember, women maid servants to the state of Kuwait. And those women workers who are working as maid servants, the moment their tenure of contract gets over, should come back to the state of India. Now, in such a situation, when the statement was made, when the policy decision was taken, remember, in the state of Kerala, there was an uproar. Who is this person to make a decision of this kind? And we want to go. Even if it is a den, or even if it is hell, we are prepared to go to the state of Kuwait and work as maid servants. Now, most of these things take place because workers consent to such a thing. Now, it is here the responsibility of the educated is more. And it is here we have to play a stupendous role in educating the people, in reforming them. And it is a violation of the international conventions. That is not done enough. That is why these things take place.
Hello, sir. I have one more question.
30 crores, not 30,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So, just 30 crore people. So there are so many problems as such with the globalization. So this is problem arisen just because of the system they are having like this. Because as in the globalization era they are running the government. So there are so many parties which they have their own view. So as they have more money, they try to invest that money. We have more technology, but we don't know how to regenerate it without the investment.
Yeah, I have an answer for this also. I want to speak. But I want to adhere to the dictum of the chairman. Now when we speak of technology, what kind of technology we have received? You just go before the UNCTAD study, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in 1999 and 2000 has submitted 2 reports, and this is a United Nations report. And in this report, it is an international document wherein they go to the extent of saying the technology transfer that has taken place till now has taken place in 95% of the cases between the parent corporation and the subsidiary. And real technology transfer has not taken place. And this is parent corporation and the subsidiary. And what is being transferred is second-rate technology. For everything there is criticism. But then remember, we have to try to adjust to the situation, because the only thing is, as Mrs. Gandhi long ago pointed out, we should not lag behind. Now when you march toward progress, something is going to take place. Now it is like an earthquake at times. Face it and then go.
May I ask a question, please? One question, please.
Only one, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. This is to Sri Rahmatullah Kotwal. So, you are talking about a state which doesn't support any religion. Now, what do you have to say about the subsidy 80 crores of rupees? There is an article yesterday in the Times of India. 280 crores is given, and according to Islam, it is very clearly mentioned that only a person who is financially, physically, mentally capable of going to Mecca should go there. He should not have any debts. That is what Islam says. And how many people actually give away 10% of their wealth, which is required under the concept of zakat?
Subsidy given to them by the Saudi Arabian government is given the subsidy to the Hajj pilgrimage. A similar subsidization given to the Manasa Sarovar Yatra, the pilgrims.
36 lakhs.
Yes. Thank you.
That is not the answer. That is not the answer. You answer to the audience. Tell them, I know what it means.
It is permissible. The subsidization of the government, the Indian government has given some subsidy to the Hajj pilgrimage, which is permissible one and which is in accordance with the Islamic rights. Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you one and all, organizers, SDM family, trust, principal, staff and students.
So I would also like to thank the other speakers, Dr. Surendra Rao, Professor, Department of History, Mangalore University, Professor G.R. Jagadish, Senior Lecturer, National Law College, Shimoga, Sri Rahmatullah Kotwal, Advocate, Central Government Standing Council, High Court of Karnataka, Dr. Subramania University Law College, JB Campus, Bangalore. I request my colleague Sri Tarana to hand over mementos, Dr. Sebastian to hand over a robe. Dr. Gudish, Dr. Surendra Rao, Professor Jagadish, Sri Rahmatullah Kotwal. Thank you, Dr. Sebastian. So tea has been served, I think. As soon as it's over, we'll start the last session of the day. 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. So we are starting, and first I request Dr. Ratna Gaudar to speak on violence against women vis-a-vis human right. Here.
Esteemed Chairperson, co-panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. My presentation is on the topic, violence against women as human rights violation. ancient history reveals that violence against women was not only condoned but expected. I just quote before you some sayings which I have come across during my PhD work. Let me quote. In ancient Egypt, it was said that no self-respecting man would have allowed his wife to speak out against him without bashing her teeth with a brick. According to an old English proverb, a woman, a dog, and a walnut tree, the more you beat them, the better they be. And the wise men of China, they have offered free advice for the benefit of husbands. I quote, listen to the counsel of your wife, but act against it. The Italians go a step further and pronounce, as a horse, whether good or bad, requires spurs. A woman, whether good or bad, requires thrashing. I stop here. In almost all the societies of the world, we find a scathing attack against women. For the question, has it changed during modern times? The answer is definitely no. From birth to death, and in times of peace as well as war, women face violence at the hands of the state, the community, and the family. Violence against women is a global problem that exists in every country of the world in some form, and the statistics paint a very horrifying picture, and India is no exception to this unfortunate situation. The underlying cause of violence against women lies in discrimination. The earlier one. Violence is both rooted in discrimination and it serves to reinforce discrimination. Now, the consequences of violence against women go far beyond immediate physical injury to the victim. It kills, tortures, and maims women not only physically but psychologically, sexually, and economically. It is one of the most pervasive of human rights violations, denying women equality, security, dignity, self-worth, and the right to enjoy her fundamental freedoms. Now, moving on to the definitional aspect of violence against women. Now, the term violence has frequently been used interchangeably with the term aggression. Violence typically refers to physical act, but the term aggression refers to any malevolent act that is intended to hurt another person. It need not be only physical, and it may cover emotional and also material deprivation. Now, broadly speaking, violence lies in the power dynamics of a social situation. What we call violence is not only aggression or injury inflicted by one individual against another. It is more precisely abuse of power. That is a behavior in which a more powerful person takes advantage of and abuses a less powerful person. Now, as to the definition of violence against women, we do not have a universally accepted definition of violence against women. But the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women in 1981 defined violence against women as violence directed against a woman because she is a woman or that affects women disproportionately. And further, in 1993, the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women has added something to this earlier definition, and it says, violence against women is not only physical, but it also includes psychological and sexual harm, and also threats of such harm, whether occurring in the public or in the private life. Now, further, the recent international legal instruments have broadened the definition of violence to include structural violence. By structural violence, they mean that is, it may be poverty or it may be unequal access to education and health. Now moving ahead, dealing with the developments in the international arena. Now firstly, in 1945, the United Nations Charter affirmed the equal rights of men and women. And in 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights stated everyone should enjoy, that is men and women, should enjoy human rights without discrimination. And in 1966, the two international covenants, that is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, they reinforce the concept of equality stated in the CEDAW committee, that is in 1992, issued General Recommendation number 19, by which it quoted that gender-based discrimination is an issue of, gender-based violence is an issue of gender-based discrimination. By this, what happened is, violence against women came to be creatively included in gender discrimination, by which we can read gender-based violence right from 1945 onwards. However, the major turning point was Vienna Conference on Human Rights, which took place in 1993, and which stated that, I quote, "Human rights of women and of the girl child are an inalienable, integral and indivisible part of universal human rights." Now by this, violence against women came to be included as human rights violation. Now further, this Vienna Conference adopted Vienna Declaration, and this Vienna Declaration called for the adoption of Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which was adopted by United Nations in 1993. Now this declaration provides a normative framework for all international actions in the issue of violence against women. The Vienna Declaration also called for the appointment of Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, who was appointed in the year 1995. And the work done by Special Rapporteur has deepened the international community's understanding about causes and manifestations of violence all over the world. And further, the Beijing World Conference on Women, which is most popularly known as Women's Convention, which took place in 1995, contains a special section on violence against women. And we can say that it shows a strong commitment at the international level to eliminate violence against women. And the later developments, we can say that Rome Statute, which was finalized in 1998, it includes certain forms of violence against women, such as rape and also war crimes as crimes against humanity. And further, a more recent one, that is, United Nations has adopted Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime to prevent, suppress and punish trafficking in persons transnationally. Now here, just excuse me. Now here I can say that there have been recent developments in the international arena so that violence against women has to be effectively dealt. Now all this has been taken place under the auspices of United Nations. But I can say that all this has been result of women's advocacy that has transformed an issue which was once shrouded in silence into a basic human rights claim, and it has changed totally the international perspective as far as violence against women is concerned. Now going further ahead, as far as the position in India is concerned, I would be basically dealing with the judicial response, some landmark judgments. But before that, the Constitution of India, it has provided many safeguards for women. And above all, it has imposed a fundamental duty on every citizen to renounce the practices derogatory to the dignity of women. And also in India, a number of women-specific and women-related legislations have been passed. But again, if a question is asked, have the women been able to reap the benefits provided for them? The answer, unfortunately, is not encouraging. Now, in this regard, I would say that the Indian judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, has played a creative role and has tried to provide justice to women affected by violence. I'm just quoting some landmark judgments. Now, the first one, that is Neelabati Behra versus State of Orissa. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court has stated that international conventions and norms which embody the basic concept of gender equality can be used for construing the fundamental rights guaranteed under the Constitution of India. In the next case, Madhukeshwar versus State of Bihar. Now in this case, the Supreme Court has held that provisions of CEDAW, that is which prevent gender discrimination and also which provide for empowerment of economic, social and cultural rights, they are an integral scheme of fundamental rights and directive principles under the Constitution. Now further, the next case, People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India. Now in this case, the Supreme Court has stated that any statute, it has to be interpreted and applied so that it conforms to and does not conflict with established international norms. Now the next case, which most of us are familiar with, Rupen Deol Bajaj versus KPS Gill, where the Supreme Court has given a decision against the high and mighty, a very renowned police officer. Now in this case, we can say that the Supreme Court's verdict is a leading light in dealing with the issue of outraging the modesty of women. Now further, all of you being law students and faculty of law, you are aware about Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan, where the Supreme Court, when a case was filed by an NGO, it has played a creative role, and here certain directions have been given for protecting a woman at working place from sexual harassment. And also the creative aspect is that the Supreme Court laid down, until a specific legislation is passed, these directions must be considered as a law. In the next case, that is Bodhisattva Gautam versus Shubhra Chakrabarti. In this case, the Supreme Court has held that rape is not only an offense under Indian Penal Code, but it also violates right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. And the creative aspect here is that Supreme Court has ordered the person who has been accused to pay compensation to the rape victim in the form of maintenance. Now in the next case, that is Delhi Domestic Working Women's Forum versus Union of India. Now in this case, the Supreme Court suggested for a formulation of a scheme whereby the government has to set up Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, where the government itself pays compensation to the rape victim when the accused is being punished. Now here, this survey of judicial decisions reveals that the Indian Supreme Court is alive to the problem of violence against women, even in the areas of lack of municipal law. And it has done its best to protect the human rights of the women subjected to violence against women. And in the conclusion, I would say that recent years have witnessed tremendous efforts and development at the international level. Now states can no longer deny responsibility for the acts of individuals. State has to take up the responsibility for any crime committed by a private person also, or a violence committed in the family. As such,